Before I say anything, I would like maybe a show of hands, but it's always kind of hard to make a spectacle of yourself. But a show of hands of how many of you actually think you have spent far too much time of your money and time on your research grant to reconcile data, to bring data together and make sure that they all match up and the age groups all match up and the way, mortality deaths are defined match up. How many of you think that you have really spent too much time on that before even you have started your analysis, right? So you spend a lot of time. So yeah, and those of you who have actually worked with data realize that you put in a lot of time to get all the data together, and then you have spent 80% of your grant and you have not even started the analysis, right? So this is an issue. So it's not just bad luck, or it's not just you. It's a widely cited estimate in my field of work. I'm an epidemiologist. And in my area of work, they estimate, when they make a grant budget, they estimate about 80% of the time. That's a lot of time and resources to have postdocs and docs, etc., to do the work of getting the data together in a form that you can actually analyze. Now, we are all here because we think data is related to peace, that we think data, it's not immediately obvious that, data, something as dry as data as numbers, how can it, promote peace? But that's why we are here. So let me start with where our work that we are presenting here, where climate disasters meets that mission. So climate-related disasters are now amongst the largest drivers of displacement. It is really, most of the displacement is somehow related to climate extremes of some sort. And displacement, resource stress, collapse of livelihoods are among the surest ways into instability and conflict. Most of you here are conflict specialists. I'm not. But you must be aware that much of the conflict are actually resource-related conflicts in one way or the other. Sorry. I've been given a very, very, very strict document to follow because all of them everybody has written this talk. So I want to make sure that I'm saying everything that people want me to say, my group wants me to say. So our approach is that climate extremes, displacement, and conflict are not three different chapters. They are actually one picture. And you cannot actually deal with either one of these three if you don't see the whole picture together. The evidence to see that picture already exists. So the data is already there, and people have said this before, that there's a lot of data out there. This is really not an issue, really not an issue. And I think to absorb money from a very limited budget nowadays to collect more data is, I think, ethically questionable. They sit in disaster databases, in displacement records, in population grids, in climate archives, all held by absolutely first-class institutions around the world. People on whom you can trust and whose name itself can bring some credibility to this data. That's all we can have. That's all we have. We cannot have the truth, as it were. But they live in separate systems. This has also been pointed out, and in incompatible formats behind different doors. By a widely cited estimate, as I mentioned before, 80% of our efforts go into getting all of this matched together before a single question is answered. So when there is a cyclone that is in the Bay of Bengal or a drought in Sahel, assembling a coherent picture of who is exposed and how they will cope still takes weeks of specialized work, not days, weeks before anything happens. And you might remember in certain famines not so long ago in the Horn of Africa, by the time you've got all this data and all this idea of who's exposed, who's not exposed, how many people are exposed, the famine has already reached a peak. So in these 2 days already today, you've seen remarkable tools, forecasts, early warning systems, nowcasting pipelines, dashboards. Nearly all of them are actually as good as the data that holds it up. I know that it sounds a bit trite to say it, but that's the truth. Any model, any nowcasting is actually as good as the data that goes into that. And I'm sure you realize that as well as I do. So what is missing is that the foundation, this data foundation is missing, this multidisciplinary data foundation. And we have started an initiative to try and build that foundation. I won't be so bold as to say we have already built it, but we have done something. We've done a proof of concept. Slide 3, and I don't know who to point this to. I suppose them. So what have we achieved so far, to have a quick? We have passed over the concept. We did the concept, we had a meeting in Bellagio, we discussed the concept with all these very, very specialized experts, half of whom I did not understand at all. And then, then we have come up with a validated proof of concept. And I would like to tell you how it came together, because the how is the interesting part. Because over time, having founded the MDAT database, which is a big, unique international natural disaster database, which is used by, for the moment, everyone, because we've got a niche market there. We've learned that bringing scientists together to work together and agree to share data, large public databases, is really a Herculean task. Not because the task itself is a scientists don't like it. Altogether, they don't like it. They've spent a lot of time. I understand it. I'm one myself. They've spent a lot of time doing this data. They don't like it. So that has been one of the most important struggles that I'm losing my time, actually. So we have brought together the 6 of the data sets that are most reliable, which include the Columbia Climate School Season database. We have the Max Planck Institute Earth Space Data Cube. We have the IDMC of the NRC, WorldPop, and so on and so forth. And 6 of them, and they have agreed to harmonize the data, to work together, share, and harmonize the data. But having scientists to agree is not the only the obstacle. We have to find, that's one part of it, but the other part is to find a partner who's able to do the mechanics of it. And that we found with data-friendly
Users
space,
can also explore in-depth visualizations of data through detailed analysis pages, offering insights into disaster event impacts, key climate indicators, and socioeconomic effects.
Yeah, I'm skipping this, okay? I think it's not very different from things that you've seen. But they have, so the Data Friendly Services has put together, harmonized the data on about 250 variables and over 22, I think, or databases or anything. So they've done this job on 3 countries, Mozambique, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. Bangladesh with the heat waves, and we compared it to Europe. So 3 countries. We've done it to show that it actually works. It is something that's actually done. It's just now been published in Nature Scientific Data, which is peer-reviewed, and as most of you over here will know, going through a peer review is a very extremely unpleasant task because they tear you down into bits, but it has been peer-reviewed and it is published. The last point I would like to make is something that doesn't sound very technical, but in fact, it is a very important aspect of being able to bring together a collaborative model for data in today's world, a collaborative model. Today, we have discovered that unless you have collaboration, it's very difficult for any one institution to do the whole thing. So we need collaboration, which is very important, and harmonization of data. So that has been one of the key aspects of the MERGE project, which is now called the eMERGE project, because we have the artificial intelligence in it, is this idea of a collaboration. This is a collaboration of a consortium of 6 institutions. They are all public institutions. They all have their databases, which are publicly financed and free and accessible, and are likely to go on in the future. So that's an important thing, that it's not going to end when the grant ends. This is not going to happen, and that's the sustainability part of this. I will end with that because I have only one point I would like to make before ending. Here are the QR codes that you can use to actually get different kinds of information on the methodologies, and I don't know what else is there. But one point that I would like to finish by is that the credibility and the trustworthiness of data today is probably one of the most important aspects of data. That is, with all the misinformation around, with the enormous amount of data that's going on, with all the misinformation around, there has to be some kind of credibility behind the data, scientific credibility, who's able to say, yes, we stand behind this data. We say, 10,256 people have died in the Typhoon Haiyan, and we stand behind this data. We stand behind this number, even if the government of Philippines says no. So this kind of scientific credibility or technical credibility is probably one of the most central aspects. Thank you. Thank you for your time.